Vancouver and Victoria.
BCTV, we're giving it all we got.
Good morning. Every single person in British Columbia should hang his head in shame today at the disgusting spectacles happening in the Parliament which we elected this spring. The leader of the opposition, right or wrong, dragged disgustingly from the chamber at the orders of a rookie novice speaker, while Walter Davidson, the speaker, cowered in the corridors outside, bullying the members of the media who did not, unhappily, dare to defy his orders not to take picture of this historically disgusting event. It would be no exaggeration to say that any reasonable person could feel that democracy in British Columbia is threatened and that parliamentary procedure is down the drain. As a matter of fact, at this very moment, I have attacked the Charter of Rights because of the fact that it takes power away from elected politicians and give it to judges. Things such as have been happening in the Legislature of British Columbia make me say, maybe that was a good thing. Take the power away from the politicians in the final interpretations and give it to the judges. The reason I am exercised this morning is the reason that you should be exercised this morning. We have a government elected on admirable objects of restraint. We have a blind wall of lack of information. We have government by exhaustion, continual sessions night and day, day and night. And of course the effect on the mentalities and the thinking processes and the IQs of the members, and some of them are not very bright to begin with, is bound to be extremely deleterious. So what do we have now? We have this piece of disgusting behavior yesterday, perhaps on both sides. You can make up your mind about that yourself. And do we have any record of it? No, we don't. It's not 2 weeks since I told you that the Speaker's ruling, that's Davidson, that his ruling was deliberately to prevent embarrassment to the government. Had it not been for that ruling of the Speaker, the disgusting spectacles of day before yesterday's behaviour in the House of Commons of Victoria, would have been on page 1 from coast to coast. And it causes me to think that perhaps somebody knew this was going to happen, and that steps had better be taken to censor and to wipe out 33 years of practice by the electronic media in the corridor from which you enter the House. You think that's not a big thing? I think it is crucial to knowing what's going on in the government, where the proceedings are not televised, where we've had what can only be described, unanimously described by any observer, as a shameful House of Commons. Cuddly teddy bears, insults, childish behavior, continual spats, lots of demeanor, lots of dignity. And it's we, the people, who suffer. And let me add something else. Surely to God, there is enough reasoned process on both sides of the House, despite all the closures, despite all the determination, to have arranged sane debate at sane times in our legislature. And this at a time, too, when this province is on the verge of industrial and economic chaos. I exaggerate not one whit. Not merely with the IWA, the pulp workers and the PPWC, but with another 100,000 unionists in a strikeable position very shortly. And then, of course, we've got the mystery bills of the government. And they are mystery bills. I think I know what they seem to say, but you can see that Bennett is now collapsing. Yesterday he gives back to the school boards what should never have been taken away from them in the first place. You know, there are times when, whether you like it or whether you don't, that I'm going to say my piece. And my piece this morning is, members of the BC Legislature and the Speaker, hang your heads in shame. As it happens today, Dave Barrett is here. We have some other guests too, whom I am bound to introduce. I have John Gogo, who is the chairman of A.A.D.A.C, the Alberta Alcoholism and Drug Abuse Commission, and Brian Kearns, executive director of the Alcoholism Commission of Saskatchewan. And thank God for a lighter piece at the end. I walked down to the International Association of Women Police the other day and chatted, you know, at some policewomen from North America and Europe. And very bright they are too. For instance,
While we wouldn't use women police on the front line necessarily, we are not yet accustomed in England to see women knocked to the ground and kicked, uniformed women. And I don't think the men themselves would bear that very well. It does happen occasionally. If you get in the middle of a rout when you can do nothing else but go with the men, that's it.
and I'll be back with Dave Barrett, whose career is over, down the tube, finish. You might as well quit now, in my opinion, after the break.
Mr. Barrett provided me with a multitude of reasons to evict him. It would appear to me, in retrospect, that Mr. Barrett was intent on making a scene and being evicted.
Here's the fabulous.
I venture to suggest to Dave Barrett, the leader of the NDP, that despite my particular support of the principle involved, that neither you nor your party has convinced the majority of people of British Columbia that anything is threatened other than your ludicrous filibusters, and that the majority of the people of British Columbia, in the words of Don Phillips, a key cabinet minister, despite your being thrown out the house bodily, that the people don't give a damn. It's time we began to run the government, and closure is one method. In other words, the people of British Columbia, as of this moment, think your behavior yesterday was appallingly disgraceful, immature and juvenile, and all you're fighting over is a tiny measure of principle to ask somebody a question and challenge his ruling. I'm giving the attitude, Mr. Barrett, seriously, of what I believe to be, and that if an election were fought today, you would lose.
You may be right. I may be the only one, and my colleagues may be the only one. But I'll tell you this. I know what my parliamentary rights are. This is the same Don Phillips, this is the same Bill Bennett that falsely ran around this province saying not a dime without debate. This is the group who went around this province saying that we were establishing a secret police force, a false statement. We had no limited times on debates. We had a House committee.
You had 153 hours on estimates.
We never implemented that year. There was an all-party committee that agreed on it. They have more than that in Ottawa. Albeit, this is the fellow who says that people don't give a damn. Maybe they don't, but I do. I do. And I'll tell you this. There is simply no way that anyone is going to take a parliamentarian's rights away. Now, I'm leaving, But as long as I'm an MLA, I know what traditional responsibilities I have and traditional rights I have.
Well, let me get down to some nitty-gritty. Grind an axe or two for you. Was Davidson cowering in the corridor, bullying the media, while you were having your argy-bargy with, what's-his-name, Parks?
It appears that Davidson was in the corridor. He was there when I was ejected. He could have come in. I twice asked the chair for a recess. I called over the clerk and gave the clerk a message to take to the chair, take some time, cool off. He's getting himself into a corner. It's an impasse. Twice I asked him, it's in Hansard, please, Mr. Speaker, take a little recess.
But you wouldn't sit down when he stood up.
I sat down.
Because that's an inviolable rule.
Look, when he stood up, I sat down. As soon as he sat down, I stood up. That's my rights. I've been there 23 years. I was very calm. I very clearly spelled out to him what Standing Order number 9 says clearly. Now, you can't beat the majority of the House. You can't win the chair, but you have a right to challenge. This is what the rule says. Mr. Speaker shall preserve order and decorum and shall decide questions of order, subject to an appeal to the House without debate. Fair enough.
But there wasn't a ruling you could challenge at that time.
That is the whole point. I said, I want a ruling so I can challenge it. He said, no, that's my opinion. I said, we do not run this place by opinions.
That was on a question of adjourning the debate after a mere 40 minutes speeches.
No, there had been almost 8 hours of debate on that subject.
Which bill?
It was Bill 2, the one with the civil servants. Now, what is at place here is the rights of a minority member. Nothing to do with social credit, nothing to do with NDP or anything else. Let me give you an analogy. It's like a team going out to play football, 2 teams and a referee. That's what the speaker is, a referee. And he assesses a penalty to one team and says, you're offside, it's 5 yards. Then he assesses a penalty and you go up and say, well, what's the penalty for? He said, none of your business. I'm taking off so many yards, and if you don't be quiet, I'll throw you out of the game. I said, look, I'd like to know what the penalty is, what infraction, so I can talk about it. He said, you shut up or out you go. That's the analogy. It's a rough analogy.
Who asked for the adjournment?
Chris Darcy asked for the adjournment. Parks made a mistake. The chair made a mistake and started a debate on the adjournment. I got up and I said, look, Mr. Speaker, there is no debate on the adjournment. A motion. Harvey Schroeder, who's a former speaker, got up and said, the leader of the opposition is right, there's no debate. You either put the question or you don't put the question. Parks then decided that I'm not going to put the question.
Mischievous, perhaps.
Well, after 9 hours, hardly mischievous. But nonetheless, that was his decision. I accept his decision. I said, now, what standing order are you making that ruling under? He then said, it's not a ruling. I said, what are you talking about? It's not a ruling. He says, not a ruling, it's my opinion. We'll carry on with the business. I said, opinions do not run this chamber. The chair is impartial. I want a ruling. And that's where it broke down.
You insisted on the ruling, and he would not give you a ruling.
He would not give me a ruling. And I said that...
This went on for 18 minutes, I believe.
Yes, very calm. I have the hands...
Calm? It didn't sound calm.
It was very calm. I said very quietly and firmly to him that I want my rights protected as a minority member. Now, I ask you to take a little recess, consult with a clerk, don't rush to this judgment. I asked him to do that twice. He said, will you leave this chamber? I said, no, I will not leave this chamber. I will not give up my right as a minority member of this chamber to challenge the chair.
And that would have called for a vote.
That's right.
And that would have brought Bennett and the rest of them out of their beds into the House.
That's right.
Because your technique has been to have your people on shift work, but every time the bell rings, they've got to bring everybody in just in case.
There hadn't been a vote for at least 5 hours. That was not my motivation at that point. Initially it was, but at that point that was not my motivation. At that point, what my motivation was that no one in the chair can take away the rights of a member to challenge.
All right, when you challenged his ruling, which was not to put the question on the adjournment, should you have got a division?
Well, he can say this, look, I'm not going to put this. And I can say, under what standing order? And then he can say, no, that's my ruling, I'm not going to put it. Then I can challenge his ruling. No matter what, you ultimately get a challenge, whether it's his ruling.
And then they vote down your challenge and you carry on.
That's right.
So he said to you, will you leave the chamber? And you said, no, I am not going to leave the chamber. This went on for how long?
Oh, about 15 minutes.
Where was the speaker at that time?
I have no personal knowledge, but when
I can tell you where he was. He was outside in the corridor standing by later to bully the media into not breaking his edict.
I saw part of that after I was ejected, but I understand he was in the corridor, and had I known that, I would have expected that he would have come in and taken the chair off the hook.
He should have done.
Yes, normally in that kind of situation, and you know, when you have somebody who's brand new and it's a tense situation, what he should have done is come in and taken over.
So then, after 18 minutes, he ordered you physically removed?
That is correct. He asked if I would leave, and I said no. I said, I am not leaving here.
Why didn't you leave and have your major battle later on with Davidson instead of this rookie fellow, Parks?
It's not with the rookie fellow Parks. I couldn't leave.
Do you think it was a plot?
No, I'm not sure.
Did you fall into a trap?
I don't think so. I don't.
Do you think the media was banned from the corridor so that when you were eventually to be dragged out that it couldn't be covered?
I don't want to believe that. And I say that sincerely. I don't want to believe that. There are coincidences that are there, but I don't want to believe that. Plot or not, the fact is, you cannot take away the rights of a member. If we cannot live by law and order in the House, how do we expect to have law and order in the community? That's the key issue.
More with Dave Barrett after the break. Couple of factual questions. You are now banned from even going into the corridors of the legislature, correct?
That is not correct. I'm not banned from the precincts. I can go into the corridors.
You, after 10 days, you lose your pay.
I don't think that's correct either. The ruling is in the precincts, not in the chamber, and that has been the normal practice of our legislature. And as long as I'm in my office or in the precincts, then there's no fine.
Are you going to do a Bill Bennett and now run around the province with your arms flapping? Not a dime without debate, not a dime without debate, destruction of democracy, and spend your time whipping up the country?
I'm not sure, and I'll tell you why some of my caution. What you said at the opening of the show is correct. We are on the edge of an unusual precipice in this province. I don't want to do anything to exacerbate a situation that should be cooled off by Bill Bennett and by the legislature itself. Normally, I would go on a speaking tour raising Cain, in quotes. But we have an unusual, dangerous social situation in this province right now that needs to be cooled off by very cautious action by politicians. I have sent a signal publicly to Bill Bennett that I am available at the end of a phone to sit down and work out a schedule for the legislation, for committees. I do not feel comfortable about what is facing us over the next few weeks, and unless there is some rational caution shown by the Socreds, we may be into a very difficult situation.
I don't know what signal you're talking about, but are you telling me now that you, Barrett, as the leader of the NDP in British Columbia, are prepared to work out a debating schedule with or without the application of closure to get Bennett's bills through in a reasonable time?
I said after Operation Solidarity met with Bennett, and he sent them up to me, which was an unusual thing. I don't know what for, but be that as it may, they came up to me. I had a press conference afterwards, and I said at that press conference, I am as close as the nearest telephone.
Don't the whips speak?
No, the whips do not speak.
Who's your whip?
Our whip is Gordon Hanson. The House leaders do not speak. We don't know. It is so crazy that the official opposition doesn't know 5 minutes before a bill is being called.
But you're as crazy as they are.
Jack, I'm as close as that telephone. We have a very serious situation in this province. I am committing myself as leader of the opposition and leader of the New Democratic Party to sit down, work out a schedule whereby some of the bills can go into standing committees, others can be dealt with in the House, and we show the public of British Columbia exactly how the system works. Those bills that have nothing to do with restraint do not require closure. However, closure has taken place. Bill 9, which is a land developer's dream, nothing to do with restraint.
The Spetterford Amendment.
That is correct. That is the one that has had closure. We intend to fight that in the House. Other bills, negotiable through their House.
Bill 2.
Bill 2, we intend, that can go to committee and be dealt with in a standing committee.
In a limited time.
3 weeks, 1 month. Standing committee allow the citizens of this province, who are in effect the government, to come to standing committees, say their piece. The opposition, the government listens. The government...
He won't do that. You know that.
Jack, I'm saying, very seriously, that is the only way to calm this province down.
You would agree that it is essential that the government can pass whatever it so wishes.
They have all the power necessary.
At any time.
At any time.
By a simple motion to take the vote.
That is right.
Which is closure in this province.
And in some instances, Jack, we've only debated bills for 2 days, and they've brought in closure.
But you're not giving him an easy way out. You're saying...
I'm giving him a sane way out.
You're saying put the setting of the dirty dozen to the standing committees, and then restrict the debate in the House after that.
Look, Jack.
Is that correct?
That is exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying calmly, publicly, that there must be some rational approach. A government must have its way.
And have you done that because you're a bit ashamed of what you did yesterday?
I made the offer before yesterday. Yesterday is a separate issue. Yesterday is a separate and distinct issue. It is like a reporter asked by a court to reveal his sources. That's a matter of principle. You would never do it. And a matter of principle, I would never give up my right to challenge the chair. That is separate. That is something very important and precious to me.
The tum-tum, the leaks from the edges of mouths in Victoria, is that Social Credit may paternalistically consider a resolution allowing you to return to the House. Would you accept such a resolution?
I have not heard whether or not they intend to do that. However, there will be a move this morning by Frank Howard to point out that what they did was frankly illegal, and the action they used is not comparable to the British House. However, I will not say anything further. That action will take place in the House this morning.
Are you seeking such a motion to be allowed to return to the House?
That is purely a matter of conscience for Bill Bennett and Social Credit. But I tell you, Jack, what I'm standing for is the rights of every member, not just Barrett. I'm leaving. But
you are the lame duck.
I'm walking straight. I'm not a lame duck. I'm leaving as an MLA. I'm leaving provincial politics.
And you can afford to be a sacrificial lamb.
Whether I was leaving or not, the rights of individual members, government, opposition, independent, must not ever be compromised for any political purpose whatsoever. If we throw away that law and order, then we throw away law and order in the community.
You call it insanity?
It's bordering on insanity, yes. It's a macho kind of, you draw a line on the floor and say, cross this line. I'm offering an olive branch, sincerely and openly.
Limited appearances in front of the Standing Committee on Key Bills.
3 weeks, a month is enough time.
The legislature could be finished then in 6 weeks.
The legislature, in terms of estimates and other bills, I couldn't say 6 weeks, but certainly there would be a time frame. It's all negotiable.
Have you called estimates yet?
No, we haven't even touched it.
Is there any limitation on estimates debates?
Not in committee, but the opposition's not going to hold up estimates. But if you think there's been a filibuster by us, you're wrong. Bill 2 hadn't been called for weeks. Bill 3 hadn't been called for weeks by the government. That's the one where they can look at police files.
The general behavior from all observers on both sides of the House has been shameful.
I don't accept that. Let's assume that that's true. Let us assume that's true. I'm saying to you and the viewers in this province, let us calmly sit down. Bill Bennett, pick up the phone, call me to his office, or delegate authority to his House leader to negotiate these bills going to standing
Whether
committees.
you're in or not.
Whether I'm in or not. Of course it doesn't depend on me going back. I'm just one person. The province is more important than me.
Calls after the break.
Make way for
What do we do? We're going to take telephone calls. We'll just take them as we go. But do be brief and pointed. You can attack or whatever. Be brief and pointed. I want to get some measure of response. Go ahead, please. Where are you?
Hello?
Well, that's you, sir. Speak up.
Yes. I was wondering why they don't just have a vote. Let the people take a vote.
People take a vote.
People took a vote on May the 5th. The government is elected to govern. The opposition is there to oppose. There's a rational system that has developed over 100 years that should be allowed to work.
Yeah, but the fact is that they're the government, they've got the majority, they have the power, they can do with this as they will.
That is exactly what they're attempting to prove.
Go ahead, please. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have been a resident here for a long time, but I am getting fed up with all this confrontation type of politics.
What do you want to be done, ma'am?
I'd like to see a little more dignity, and it just doesn't seem right to me that when they do have debate time, that it's used for very trivial purposes.
Is it, Mr. Barrett? Is she not correct?
On occasion it is, but the way to handle that is put television in the chamber.
We don't like the...
You didn't put television in the chamber.
We brought in a question period, we brought in Hansard, the next move was radio and television.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Barrett, there's a couple of things I'd like to say. First of all, you mentioned that what happened yesterday with your expulsion was illegal. I sincerely hope that you would be willing to take some legal action if it is illegal, and if it comes to that. And second of all, I hope that if you ever go on federal politics, you can see if there is some way to ensure that elections are not fraudulently run the way this past one has.
No, forget the fraudulent nonsense. Can you take legal action?
I would prefer, before any decisions made on that the House deal with the matter. These kind of issues should be dealt with by the House itself.
But you can't take legal action.
Well, some people say we can, but I would prefer at this point that the House deal with its own problems.
I thought the House was supreme.
In some instances, according to our own provincial constitution, which is years old, there are some questions whether or not the House is supreme.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Barrett,
Yes, sir.
you took the right stand. More power to you, and I hope you continue to take the same stand you're taking now.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
It's unfortunate, Jack, that these people are allowed to do what they are doing. The bottom line is this. They are in power. They've got the majority.
That's right.
They will be able to do whatever they want,
That's
irrespective of how much effort Mr. Barrett or any of his colleagues tried to throw in their way. They're going to get away with it, irrespective of how good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah. Now look, this caller is absolutely right, and he's very practical.
I work...
But I want to just say one thing. It's true what he's saying, but there is a civil way of doing things.
You mean sophisticated?
Not sophisticated, civil.
Civilized.
Civilized.
Couth.
Couth.
One more comment, Jack, is that is, I work for the BCGEU, and I'm on one of my earned flex days, believe it or not. Now, the bottom line is the same with the government employees union. They're saying that legally they cannot do what they're doing by laying you off without cause, without giving you severance pay. If it's in the legislation, which they are going to propose, they are doing everything in accordance with the law.
It's
And
retroactive law.
all I can say is, Dave, keep trying.
Thank you. The Dirty Dozen are going to be retroactive. Retroactive laws, are they acceptable in the parliamentary system?
Accepted in the parliamentary system, but question in court.
Question under the Charter of Rights.
No, before the Charter of Rights. The question of retroactive legislation has been tested in courts before, long before the Charter of Rights. That's under common law.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Barrett. I'd like to say, first of all, that I support you completely in exactly what you're doing, but I think that probably nothing will ever be satisfactorily completed in the House until you allow television coverage of the House so that we can see exactly what behavior the membership of the House is capable of doing.
I'm not opposed to that, but this shocking development of not allowing television and tape recorders in the corridor, that's unbelievable. And I saw my friend or my opponent here, Jack Webster, whatever, correctly vent some deep anger over that ruling. I feel that anger too. This is your government. This
I would
is
like
your
to.
government.
I'd like to ask the Speaker a question on the air right now. Is it correct, Mr. Speaker, that you ordered at least one radio reporter to erase a recording he had, or you believed he had, on a tape machine, and said, "Erase that, or you'll be in trouble," or what's that effect? I know that one television reporter said to him, "Can we shoot this?" And he said, "No, if you do, you're in trouble." That was when he was outside the House while this battle was going on inside the House, and the Speaker, that there is no doubt in my mind, was totally wrong and failed to fulfill his duty by not taking over in the House.
Now, there are rules.
I think I'm angrier than you are.
There are rules of what you've just said against the Speaker of the House. There are rules that you could be dragged before the bar of the House and chastised and imprisoned in our little prison cell over there in Victoria.
I'd love such a holiday. And
Well,
the
it's time of
notoriety-
restraint. There's no meals.
Oh, no.
No meals.
And the notoriety on a point of principle would be welcome.
Look, it is this point of principle. A year ago, the Social Credit government put a motion on the order paper attacking a Vancouver province editorial. Then rather than follow through and demand that the editor come to the bar of the House, they were too chicken to call their own motion. The fact is they have been playing with the edge of the media all along. And
Do
they
you
have
not have a motion on the floor now censoring the Speaker for the last affray?
2 weeks ago, we brought a substantive motion on the order paper censuring the Speaker. They won't call that. That's very unusual. When the House loses confidence in the Speaker, that motion should be dealt with immediately.
After the break. To Dave Barrett. Go ahead, please. Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Yeah. It's Peter Gazzola.
Never mind the names. Give me your opinion.
Oh, my opinion?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't had the opportunity to talk to you, Dave A.A.C, and was a protest at the Budworm spray in Yale years ago.
Thank you very much for your call. Go ahead from Powell River.
Yes, Mr. Barrett, you deserved what you got yesterday because of your childish behavior in the House.
Thank you for the call, and given the same circumstances, I do the same thing again. No one will take away my rights as long as I am an MLA to question the chair.
Anything else, sir?
No, thank you, Jack.
Thank you. Go ahead from Kelowna.
Yes, good morning. Happy belated anniversary, Jack, first.
Thank you.
And Dave, it's great to see you on the air.
Make your point.
Okay, my point is I'm proud that Dave stood up for his rights, and I think that the chair is being persuaded by the social credit government, and they're not able to make their own decision because of the social credit government, and it's being manipulated.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Barrett,
Yes.
how would you like to leave the political spotlight as the honest man that you always pretended to be? Now, you and I have had 1,001 differences of opinion politically, but it never came to blows. There has been sound and fury from time to time. But I'm the chap who stands falsely accused by a fuzzy-headed, unscrupulous radio broadcaster of having taken a...
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I think it's a colorful end to his career. Now Warren Beatty can play his part in a movie.
Well, I really, quite honestly, thank you for the call, but let's deal with it. I don't care how you feel. I tell you this, it's important to me. I learned something about the British parliamentary system. I became a monarchist. I believe in this system, and it is more important than me or Bill Bennett or anyone else. And when that system is infringed, it is my responsibility to do what I did.
Go ahead, please.
Jack, I'm interested in your opinion and Dave's. At what point in our democracy must this go to before the Lieutenant Governor would be expected to voice an opinion?
I don't know. It's on the House rules itself. I don't know if the LG himself could be dragged into this.
I would say quite bluntly, no, that he cannot be dragged into this.
I don't think so.
Until and if the House is, the government is defeated on a vote, he is not involved at all, I would suggest.
The closest he had to come involved was last year when the Socreds went beyond March 31st without spending authority. Then he had to get involved in.
Okay,
Go ahead from Victoria.
Yes, I'd like to say, David, that you're right about everything you say, except one thing. You don't give enough credit to the people of Victoria and of the rest of the province.
What do you mean?
I don't know what you mean by that, but that's up to... Look, the people have voted. The election is over. They've got the government they wanted. We have a responsibility to oppose in the House, and we're doing that. But the government is there to government.
You say that it's up to the people, or it's up to the government to keep the people under control. I don't think the people need to be kept under control. I think that if the government keeps up doing what they'll do, they'll get what they deserve.
Okay. You were going to raise a point from Bill 3, which I missed. I'd like you to try and back up the statement you made to me off the air.
There is legislation in one of the sections, and I'll dig it up for you, that will permit cabinet ministers to call up police chiefs' files, police officers' files, that will call up public health officers' files to a cabinet minister to discuss for personnel practices. The Union of Police Chiefs and the Ontario Police Federation has passed a resolution against this legislation. The police officers put an ad in our local newspapers against this legislation. It clearly spells out that any cabinet minister has the right to call up a police file right in the middle of an investigation. Now, what in the world has that got to do with
You got to point that section out to me before you go.
Before I go, I will.
Right.
What's it got to do with restraint?
Paul River, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
Excuse me. I'll be quite brief. Excuse me, I'm nervous. I support Mr. Barrett, but I'm concerned, very concerned about our democratic process and three things that the government is doing. Of course, the ejection of the Leader of the Opposition from the House, the use of closure in the House, and the apparent change in the election mandate that the government has done to the people. And I wonder if Mr. Barrett is aware of any remedy, excuse me.
Any remedy for these 3 points?
Either through the Lieutenant Governor or even the Governor General of Canada or any legal process that either any political party or the people of the province have access to.
Okay, good point. Have you an answer, Mr. Barrett?
No, the British parliamentary system is a very abrupt system. It allows for the election period for a transfer of power. But once power is given to a unicameral house, that's it.
To a what house?
To a unicameral. We have one level of legislation. We don't have a Senate or anything else. Okay. Once that's done, then the government is there to govern and the opposition is there to oppose. The government always wins on those numbers. That's the way the system is.
Is it not a fact that at the very worst, the system we inherited from the mother of parliaments can, under a strong prime minister, become an absolute dictatorship?
That is why there has always been tradition of gentlemanliness and graciousness in always pulling back from absolute power. It was Lord Acton who said, "Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely."
One final section with Dave Barrett after the break.
Here it is here.
Mr. Barrett, when you finish this program shortly, you come back to Victoria. What will your duties be from now on? You've said you're not going to tour the province and raise Cain, a la Bennett. You're going to go to the legislature every day it's in session.
I'm not saying that I will not tour the province. At this point, I do not think it is advisable. I would prefer that some calmness return, and I make that offer very openly and very publicly. In terms of my duties, I will go back. I will operate from my office. I have a great deal of work to do there, and our group in Victoria has done an outstanding job, and that's it.
I don't know. You haven't been all that smart. Go ahead, please.
They've been very good.
Go ahead, please.
Can either Jack or Dave enlighten me by telling me what is the difference between our democratic government in Victoria and the one by Mr. Marco in the Philippines?
Mr. Who?
Mr. Marcos in the Philippines. I have not been shot, and I do not think I will be. The second thing is there is a federal government, and we have a Charter of Rights now. No, the government is not a dictatorship, and some extravagant words have been used, unfairly, I think. The fact is they are reaching an edge where by showing disrespect for the system, it will create an atmosphere out there at a time of tension as exists now, when the social fabric of this province is being changed, where people will feel right in doing things that may be unlawful. My point is, law and order must prevail in the House if we expect law and order to prevail on the streets.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, I got a question for Mr. Barrett. A man of his caliber, a political caliber, how he could accept Mr. Davidson as a speaker when he knew that he's not
well,
neutral person.
what we've done is the traditional parliamentary thing. We have a motion on the order paper. It's 2 weeks old now that should have been called immediately to express our non-confidence in the Speaker. Now, that's what we can do in Parliament. In any normal Parliament, such a serious move would have been called immediately in the House. You know, anywhere in the Commonwealth, including other nations that have the parliamentary system, the approach is to put a motion on confidence in the Speaker, but they haven't called that motion.
Just by the way, if you see the Speaker, will you give him a message from me to tell him to stop writing me partisan letters? Mr. Jack Webster, dated September the 30th, signed by K. Walter Davidson, Speaker. Dear Jack, may I enclose a copy of a recent column by, talks about a local Victoria hack, which I hope will be of interest to you. This is a column in the Times Colonist, which pokes fun at Webster and Barrett, and I've no objection to it at all. It may well have been valid. But I strongly resent the Speaker using public money, public time, public paper, public office to act as my clipping service.
Please, don't rip it up. I think he's violated his role as Speaker in writing a partisan letter. And
undoubtedly partisan. Here's a smart aleck column which makes you look stupid, Webster.
It doesn't matter about the column. The fact that the Speaker
writes to me
is writing someone in the media with other clippings that are partisan, that's very serious.
Serious breach of his position.
It is.
I was taking it as a offhand kind of piece of stupidity on his part.
No, it's a very serious breach.
We shall paste it together again and I shall present it to you. Okay. Change of pace after the break. Thanks to Dave Barrett.
Thank you.
In my presence now, and I apologize for keeping them waiting, is John Gogo, who is chairman of the A.A.C. What the hell is that?
That's the Alberta Alcoholism and Drug Abuse Commission, A.A.D.A.C. it's called.
Here is Mr. Brian Kearns, who's executive director of what?
The Alcoholism Commission of Saskatchewan.
So you're a civil servant?
Basically, yes.
And he's a politician?
That's right.
And you're from Dublin?
That's right.
And if there's ever a country from which experience has been taken on alcoholism, it is your mother country.
That's true.
I can't say the same about you, Mr. Gogo. But let's talk quite serious for a moment or two about you chaps who are trying to educate the public. Are you doing any good at all, or is the full power of the law not the only thing which will stop alcoholism abuse particularly?
Well, Jack, you've just seen an example of what television can do. You know, legislatures are full of people who are elected via television. And when you have an industry that spends perhaps $100 million a year convincing people as a way of life they should be drinking, it makes it extremely difficult with public funds to try and counteract that. But I'm of the view, certainly in Alberta, and hopefully as a result of this conference of chairmen in Victoria the other day, that we've made some progress saying, hey, you know, let's get to people while they're young, let's point out to them what the pitfalls are. Let them make their own decisions.
Just a minute, which conference in Victoria? Explain the conference.
Well, we had a conference of commission chairmen from across Canada held in Victoria on the 3, 4, and 5. And the idea was, although we all operate under separate statute, we have different masters, that we have a common denominator, as most Canadians move once every 5 years, that I feel it's very important that we have some commonality of interest with regard to prevention in alcohol and drug abuse.
Well, two things have happened which may well be reflected in Eurogast provinces. One, we're allowing alcohol advertising now at certain times. Do you allow it in Saskatchewan?
We've just introduced the legislation about 2 weeks ago to allow it.
Do you allow alcohol?
Yeah, it's been there since 1973 on the basis of the free enterprise system and allowing free choice. It's been electronic since '73.
But is that not in itself a bad influence on the younger population of the country?
No question. No question it's a bad influence. But I simply would have to point out that this day and age of technology, where the cable systems from the U.S., you know, come into our homes, the feeling is, the view is, perhaps rightly so, that why should local business people in your business be prohibited from advertising alcoholic beverage?
Now, we had a specific alcohol and drug commission which has been wiped out technically, although actually it disappeared a couple of years ago. And I want to ask you for a moment in your capacity as the Saskatchewan Alcoholism Commissioner. Oh, drugs I was going to talk about. You're not drugs.
Well, we handle drugs as well, but alcohol is the #1 drug problem.
I know you keep saying that.
It's true.
Do you believe in the kind of propaganda, and I'm not saying propaganda is bad, whereby we now have commercials on the air saying, if you see a drunken driver, Daddy, that man's driving funny. Oh, Daddy, you should do something about it. He might hurt somebody. And we're encouraging people to, quote, snoop and turn in drunken drivers. Do you use that kind of advertising?
Yes, and I'd like to see more of it, because drunk driving is just one consequence of alcohol abuse, but it's a consequence that has life-stake threats for you and for every other driver around the province.
Surely the answer must be that where there is a death in any motor vehicle accident involving accident, that person should be banned for life from driving a vehicle.
Well, Jack, until we as a society, as citizens, and I think that's where it's at, have said we've had enough and are prepared to do something like other nations have, all the laws in the world are not going to change things. And my concern is we convict some 2,500 impaired drivers a month in Alberta. That's almost 30,000 a year. Many of them repeaters. Many of them repeaters. And as you know, I'm sure, based on your experience, they're not from a certain level of society.
No.
They're from a cross-section.
Everybody.
Heavens, go into the Bayshore, sure, and until we can change public attitudes, the same way that we've managed to change public attitudes about other things, frankly, there's not much hope.
I can't think of anything where we've managed to change public attitudes except to make everything more permissive.
Well, not true with smoking. There are good... It's not true about smoking.
You got me.
Okay. Well, the long haul is that...
Guilty.
Well, that's another form of addiction, and it's also a health risk problem. But we are changing public attitude, and in the long haul, through education, public attitude will change. All the laws in the world won't stop people choosing their vices.
I never thought of that at all, but in fact, the anti-smoking campaigns, I suppose, have been successful in terms of the fewer number of people who now smoke.
Yes, we're now, and I don't want to knock anybody, but I think our tobacco companies have noticed a dramatic reduction in the use of cigarettes in Canada, certainly with adults. They're now turning to the third world, and that presents a whole new problem, by the way. But at home, we've got a concern that some 28% of all the girls in our school system smoke and 23% of the boys. So our messages have worked well with adults in terms of smoking.
But not working with kids.
But not working with kids.
How about you?
Same with us. It's the young teenage girls particularly that are increasing their smoking levels.
You see, when I was an idiot kid, it was smart to smoke. And while our grandfathers called them coffin nails, we did not regard them, nor were we bombarded with anything about the health hazard, were we?
Well, when you're young, you don't think much about health hazards.
Well, I'm not so sure. Nowadays, surely to goodness, it's having some effect on both smoking and drinking.
There's no question that the young people in our society today are far more knowledgeable, in my view, far more competent. The parents less so, but the kids, and they're our future. And I feel, quite frankly, that $1 invested today in education, certainly in prevention with young people, and in my view, we got the system back where we spent 99% of our resources in acute care hospitals, 1% on prevention. This province of BC alone is about 33 cents on every dollar goes into hospitals, for God's sake. Surely, a little public priority and the change in priorities could change that.
And I hate to think the proportion of that 33 cents on every dollar that's dealing with alcoholism and or some form of drug prescription or otherwise abuse.
Well, it wouldn't register on the scale.
Gentlemen, I apologize for cutting you short. I'm grateful for your presence here this morning. You've both been extremely lucid. Gogo, John Gogo, and you've got 4 Gogo dancers of your own.
4 girls, right on.
That's right. Chairman of the A.A.C, and Brian Kearns of the Saskatchewan Alcoholism Commission. I thank you, gentlemen, for your patience and courtesy with me this morning.
Well, thank you, Jack.
I shall be back after the break.